Well. I probably got the thing the Leafs had. Oh, you know what? Why don't we bring this over? There we go.
It's certainly been going around, Frank. A whole bunch of folks in my office have been hit with it too.
Oh shit! And it lasts long. It's not a
it's not one of those quick things. It's one of those lingering things, kind of like the chest infection that Ottinger supposedly had.
Absolutely. Well, I hope he's better now. Well, he's got plenty of time to get better.
Definitely does.
So here it is. The Leafs chatter. I got just, like when you're sick, the mandatory soup.
Excellent. Soup is always important.
Italian wedding soup.
Oh, even better.
Yeah. Okay. So that is good. All right. So now we're here finally, 5 or 6 days after the last game. So it's was it a week tomorrow or a week today that they finished? It doesn't matter anyway.
Doesn't matter.
It's been a while.
Still out.
So in case there's any doubt who I'm cheering for. Yeah, I'm hoping Canada does it, or Edmonton, however you want to. Now, there are people out there who are supporting Edmonton, but not necessarily because they're Canadian, because they're different, and these are all reasons I want to see Edmonton do well. It'd be good to see Connor McDavid achieve something that every great player like him, I know how much he wants to do it, and he's very focused. And I got to tell you, Aaron, the guy, I find nothing bothers him. Is that, like, the last time I saw him bothered was when he was talking about the contract he was going to sign and his frustration with the team not winning. He wanted to win. And that was the only time I remember him being frustrated, when he was contemplating maybe he won't be in Edmonton Oiler because he wants to win.
Well, there were some points that were relatively obvious during the Amazon documentary that they were doing about times when he was frustrated with the team, particularly in the later rounds of the playoffs last year. But for the most part, Connor's one of those more level-headed and even keel sort of players. I hesitate to use the word unflappable because he can fly off the handle at times, and he does still show emotion. But he's a lot more, I guess, grounded, I think, than some of his peers when it comes to that sort of thing.
He separates the frustration with his ability to play. I don't see it affecting his game.
No, it doesn't seem to. I think you're right in that regard.
And that's what makes him very special. So tonight, Florida is on the road.
Yep.
Mandatory split required for them.
And the Oilers have a little bit of an extra advantage, almost like the toonie under the ice. A lot of the what they did was, for some of their Canadian players, where they got ice out of their local rinks, and that was combined with the batch when they put down a fresh layer of ice at Rogers Place in Edmonton. So there's a little bit of ice there from Newmarket, a little bit from Markham, a little bit from a few other arenas around Canada for the Canadian boys, just to give them a bit of an extra boost. I know we're not really supposed to be all that superstitious, but it's definitely there.
No ice from Germany?
Not that I'm aware of. The article that I saw only had indicated that they were doing it for locals, as opposed to those overseas players.
So the influence of it's funny, being worried about fate, or trying to make fate work for you. All the while, they go to the Campbell Trophy and touch it, spurning, that kind of fate.
Well, as Connor said, last year we didn't touch it and we lost, so we figured, what, this year we may as well touch it, because what do we got to lose? Well, if it didn't work, then we'll know what the issue is.
I think the issue is that the Edmonton Oilers have a really good team, a really, really good team. And when one thinks of that team and what they have. They're doing it without Hyman, and Hyman was one of their key players. So, they've got guys that seem to, be coming through that'll help, make up for that. Do you think it'll be offense? Well, the Oiler offense will need to set up in the zone, which is hard to do with Florida. And Florida is a awesome forechecking team.
No, that's I think the real issue for them is they need to find a way to break through. They need to find a way to break down Florida defensively. I'm not sure. I'm not a good enough hockey analyst to figure out exactly what they should be doing to break through. I do know that they do have to be willing to throw the body. I do know that they have to be willing to get rough in the corners. And I do know that Darnell Nurse has to be absolutely at his best, as do Draisaitl and McDavid, and pick a player on that Edmonton team. They all have to be better than their best in order to win. And that's going to be difficult at the best of times, but at the same time, it's still doable. So
the big thing is they need to be consistent. They need to play the game, and they can't let Florida score first of all. Florida scoring first is deadly. The other thing is I'm waiting to see. I'm very, 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 very interested in seeing how the officiating works.
Well,
if we remember against the Leafs, one penalty, and it was against the Leafs.
Yeah, wow.
Edmonton needs the power play.
Unfortunately, sometimes it does seem like they need that to kickstart everything. And it's telling that we're getting to this point of the season, and there is this reliance on special teams to differentiate between the good teams and the better teams. Connor Brown is still listed as day-to-day. Alec Regula is still out. Zach Hyman had surgery, so they're both not available.
I heard that Brown was going to be able to play. Have they changed that?
He is listed as a game-time decision and day-to-day on dailyfaceoff.com. The top two lines are unchanged. We're still looking at Nuge, McDavid, and Perry, Kane, Draisaitl, and Kapanen. Then we're looking at Trent Frederick, who the Oilers weren't sure that they'd get back in time for the playoffs. Thank goodness he did. Adam Henrique and Connor Brown, who will be a game-time decision. There's Vasily Podkolzin, Matthias Janmark, and Victor Arvidsson were on the fourth. You got Ekholm and Bouchard, Nurse and Kulak, and Wallman and Klingberg for their defensive pairing. So that hasn't really changed. It looks like Skinner's getting the start. Picks will be backing him up. So, yeah, it's that game time decision that holds everything in flux there. So we're not 100% sure who they're going to bring in should Connor Brown be unable to go.
My apologies.
No worries.
I'm interested. Seth Jones arrived. Oh, sorry. Seth was it Seth Jones?
You think it's Seth Jarvis?
No. Let me see here. Seth Jarvis. Okay, yeah, Seth Jarvis. There's an importance on the defense getting the puck up. We're going to find out if this Edmonton team can do it, because that really is that's Florida's kryptonite. If they can't keep you in your end, I think Bob is he's a great goaltender, but if they can make Florida panic, one of the reasons why Bob is so good is the same reason why the Leaf goalies are good. You got defensemen who minimize the amount of real good chances, and all they have to do is make the obvious save. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't make any great saves. Of course he does, but that can be limited to 2, maybe 3, a game. So we're going to find out. I'm going to see here. I want to see how, if there's going to be goaltender interference in this game. I'm waiting to see if that happens. I'm waiting to see the away from the play cross checks into the boards. And I want to see if there's any penalties. If Edmonton's been pretty good, they've gotten that kind of stuff and they've gotten penalties for it. I'm hoping to see that we'll see Edmonton get a couple of power plays they deserve, not the turning of a blind eye like we saw against the Leafs and a little bit against Carolina.
There's been a little bit of a change in complexion, obviously here. They are keeping together Lusterine, Lundell, and Marchand. That's a line that should give everybody fits. Jesper Bohlqvist has moved back with Jonah Gadjevich and Thomas Nosek on the fourth line, being replaced at left wing by Evan Rodriguez on the first line with Barkov and Reinhardt. There was some question as to whether or not Reinhardt would be able to make it back as well. Evidently, based on the lineups that were posted this morning, it does look like he's ready to go. Verhaeghe, Bennett, and Kachuk are going to round out the second line for you there. Forsling and Ekblad, Nico Mikkola, who's apparently all better, Seth Jones, not Jarvis, that's on me, and Nate Schmidt and Dmitry Kulikov are the defensive pairings, and it does look like Bobrovsky is going to be the one to go with Vitek Vanacek backing him up. AJ Greer is still listed as day-to-day, so there's how Florida is going to draw in. It is going to be a very interesting first game because it's going to establish very quickly what the rules are for both teams when it comes to penalties and when it comes to what is and isn't going to be called.
How physical a game it's going to be, and Edmonton is more than any of the teams that Florida's played. Edmonton is the most capable of rising up to that kind of play. They're far more, and they have some pretty good agitators on their team as well. And I'm talking about Edmonton, and so they're going to. It's going to be interesting. We'll see how the whistle plays in this game. It's going to be very important. I know also that Connor McDavid, oh, shoot, I haven't done my Tim Hortons who's going to score thing. Oh, well, I'll have to do that.
You've got another hour and 40 minutes or so to get that in before game starts. So.
Before the game starts, yeah. So I'm looking forward to this game. I'm looking forward to the hockey that's going to happen. But I'm looking forward more to seeing this Edmonton team. They got to win tonight. They can't afford to lose tonight. They've got to play the game like this is game 7. They got to win this game, and then that way they set themselves up. But anyway, they should win. They should win the game in front of them anyway. So that's essentially the same wish that the team has.
Yeah, at the end of the day, every game from now on out is a game 7. There's no such thing as an easy game.
And goaltending in the Edmonton net, Skinner. What do you think?
That is, and again, it's a huge question mark. It's always wild when it comes to these sorts of things. You know, I'm hoping that he can keep going the way that he has been. I know you don't necessarily want to rely on Pickard. There is a championship-winning pedigree there, but that was a while back, so we don't want to be overly reliant on that. I'm not really a big fan of the schedule either. You know, they're going the 4th, the 6th, the 9th, then the 12th. We don't see a Saturday game until the 14th, and that's game 5. The series could be over by then, and we will not have had hockey on a marquee night. We got Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Thursday.
On a Canadian marquee.
No, and you know, regardless of whether or not it's a Canadian or an American night, you're not going to have basketball
What's on Saturday
on
that they can't have the hockey game on Saturday?
That I'm not sure of. You know, they've weirdly spaced it. Is what I'm trying to say, because they got Wednesday, Friday, then Monday, then Thursday. There's 2-3 day gaps in there. I'm not sure if it's a question of them having to have contracts settled out properly for advertising or whatever else, like promotions that they're trying to do to make sure that they have certain things
Arena availability.
There's that possibility too, but let's be honest here, ain't nobody looking to play Amarin Bank Arena, especially not for concerts. You know, this early in the summer. It's mostly going to be outdoors if you're in Florida, and ain't nothing going on in Edmonton right now. I checked. So, you know, I'm curious as to why it falls out the way it has. I know they're trying to draw it out for as long as possible to try to get as many eyes on it as possible, maybe hoping the NBA season wraps up before then, so that they can be the sole thing in the playoffs. But I'm confused as to why it looks the way that it does.
Well, the two schools of thought. Does a game after game after game keep the fans interested? Does the long gap allow the interest to fade a little?
Well, I mean, you're looking at with the NBA schedule, they're going the 4th, the 6th. Hockey is going the 4th, the 6th, and the 9th. The NBA is going the 5th, the 8th, and then Wednesday the 11th for the OKC and Indiana Pacers. There's no conflict between those two there. As a matter of fact, if they wanted to go even earlier, they could probably steal crowd share from the Pacers and Thunder if they were to play. But again, I'm not the scheduling guru here. I don't know what's going through their heads. I'm not sure about arena availability when it comes to that sort of thing. So it's just I'm just afraid that if they don't keep it going at the pace that they have, players are going to get cold. It's going to be more risk of injury because they're going to be tighter coming into games because they've had the extra days off. Even with practices, you can't get the same sort of a workout that you would when you're playing a game because it's not the same intensity. Doesn't matter if you're trying to practice hard or not. This is a concern, obviously, that I have going in here with the schedule spaced out the way it is. But I trust that the NHL and Gary Bettman know what they're doing.
Okay, that was just a bit of a pause. All right, so I'm now the coaches. We got one coach in Florida that likes playing mind games, and we got another coach in Edmonton who really doesn't say that much. Knobloch doesn't say that much. I wonder, he sounds to me in what we're seeing, he's a lot like the Leaf coach. He's more about motivation than he is X's and O's. And I'm just wondering, is that a good thing against Florida? I guess it on one hand it could be, Aaron, because of course Florida has a system. They send people, 2 guys in a corner. If you got a talented defense that can move the puck and move the puck up, we saw in Game 7 the Leafs could have won that game if they would have scored in a breakaway. They had a couple of breakaways, and they didn't. So we know that you can get behind Florida because of the pressure they put on you in your end. And I believe that Edmonton has the kind of speed that they can take advantage of that. The question is, will you beat Bobrovsky? Leafs couldn't.
Yeah, but when you're taking outside shots like the Leafs were forced to by the defense pushing to the outside, that makes, and again, you mentioned this earlier, that you don't want to have your goalie have to make highlight stops all the time. 2 or 3 a game is more than enough. By pushing the Leafs to the outside the way that Florida's defense did during that series, it enables Bobrovsky to make the higher percentage saves. You allow less high danger shots from the slots in that area right between the face-off circles and the hash marks in, and you're golden. So,
well, that's an important thing. You mentioned the NBA. We've got an NBA final with 4 Canadians, one of them the MVP of the NBA. Pretty good stuff. Canadian players: Montreal, Toronto, Hamilton.
No, I'm actually really happy to see the surge and the uptick in Canadian players. This goes hand in hand, with Canada's improved standing on the world basketball stage. We are slowly catching up to our American neighbors, even though we have a 1/10 of their population. So it's good to see that sort of thing. But yeah, based on the Canadian players that are making their presence felt, I think it's absolutely fantastic. The other thing that we have to consider here too is Pascal Siakam. If he can take the Pacers through to the promised land 5 years after having taken the Toronto Raptors through, that I think sort of puts the button on a Hall of Fame career for him. Taking 2 teams that are not particularly known for doing particularly well in the playoffs and getting both of them through to the finals, that is something that can only make him more desirable in the long run.
I'm still dumbfounded by why he left the Raptors. I guess he just didn't want to be a part of a rebuild.
I mean, it's not, basketball isn't the easiest game to play. You put yourself through it, and it is a physical game. made more so by the fact that you don't wear pads. Hockey, yes, has more violent collisions, but don't kid yourself if you're thinking that basketball is a soft game. I've played against some guys that make your life absolutely miserable. So it is possible that he didn't want to have to go through the rebuild and being the big man and being the sole target on the team during that particular rebuild. I can't necessarily say I blame him, but also at the end of the day, when you look at the money that's involved as well, you know, he has a chance now to set his family up for the rest of his life. So I can understand why he did it.
You can set a few families up with the money that basketball players make.
Yeah, for sure.
I know you want to talk about Formula One.
Well, you did happen to see the race, right?
No, I did not.
So there was the incident. There was also the fact that Lance Stroll was going to be fined by the FIA for missing his scheduled weigh-in time after his practice. But it turns out the wrists that he broke at the start of last season were starting to give him more issues. So he has stepped away temporarily from Aston Martin, which of course raises speculation as to who would actually be replacing him. One of the thoughts was Valtteri Bottas. Another is they are planning on having Lance in the car after the Spanish Grand Prix, but Stoffel Van Dorn and Felipe Drugovich, the two reserve drivers, are actually going to be in Le Mans. There's also Jack Crawford, who races in F2, and Tina Hausman in the F1 Academy. Van Dorn, like I mentioned earlier, and Drugovich, I think, are both out because they're tied up with Peugeot's Le Mans car race. So they're going to be doing the 24 hours while this is going. At the end of the day, Aston would probably most likely call on Valtteri Bottas or Frederick Vesti from Mercedes. This is made possible by the fact that Aston Martin has Mercedes engines in their car. So there's that link there.
Absolutely. Well, we can't, whenever there's a championship, there's always a mayoral bet. They have one in this game with Florida and Edmonton.
Yeah, they're deciding to up the ante a little bit more this year. Last year, Amarjeet Sohi and Mike Ryan. Amarjeet ended up wearing a Panthers jersey during a council meeting. That's usually how these sort of bets work. Is one will wear the others, or the loser will ship the other guy a container of their best food, that sort of thing. This time around, however, with the Edmonton Oilers and the Panthers in a rematch, the losing team's mayor will read a decree written by the mayor of the victor city in City Hall and declare a certain date to be set aside to honor the championship winner in the losing city.
Wow.
So that means that you could potentially see an Edmonton Oilers Day in Sunrise or a Florida Panthers Day in Edmonton.
Wow.
So that's upping the stakes a little bit right there.
Yeah. It's a lot like Saturday Night Live when they write the news for the other guy.
Yep.
Stuff comes out when you do stuff like that, right? So let's talk about Robertson leaving the Leafs and going somewhere. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there was the thought that Robertson could potentially have been going to the Sharks. I did also float the idea that he could potentially join his brother in Dallas. However, there are now rumblings that the Montreal Canadiens might actually take a flyer on Jason and bring him to Montreal, which might be additional inducement for Robertson to try to catch on with the Canadiens from the Leafs, which would mean that he'd be going in conference to play with his brother. That could definitely be interesting. The fact that Jason Robertson is now 25, he's the same age as Nick Suzuki. Jason hasn't missed a single game in the past 3 seasons. He's entering the last year of a 4-year contract worth $7.75 million. Given the fact that the Stars already have 5 players earning over 8 per season, it's quite conceivable that they don't think they'll have the cap space necessary to sign him to a new contract at the end of this season, where he'll be an RFA with arbitration rights. So they may want to take advantage of that to ship him off to Montreal.
Yeah, and leave a no-tax state.
Yeah, that is going to be tough. That is one of those things that Kent Hughes is going to have to find a way to address those needs. If Robertson is still available, and to find a way to get him to Montreal, because that could be very interesting.
So Edmonton tonight or Florida?
I'm taking Edmonton just strictly sentimentally. I would like to see them take the first game. I would like to see them establish the fact that they're not going to get kicked around the rink in their own city. Ideally, I would like to have them take 2. I have the feeling it's going to be a split. The second game is where you're going to see a lot of the fireworks happening. That's going to make things a little bit more interesting.
Well, we're going to see what kind of fireworks happen tonight.
Yep.
Vander Kane, I think it'll be around him. It'll be centered around him, and maybe, you know, I don't know. He's been known to travel through a crease.
Well, yeah, and you've got Corey Perry, who I'm sure is going to establish himself net front, and you've got Sam Bennett, who more than likely will try to take a pod shot at Skinner just to try to get Pickard into the game, because Florida, I think, feels that they have a better chance of beating Pickard than they do.
They learned that lesson from Toronto. Get rid of the number 1 goalie.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a 7-game series.
So that's one of those things where and here's the saddest part of it all. Carolina had their number 1 goaltender and unfortunately couldn't get more than 1 win, whereas Toronto took Florida to the 7 with their backup. So it is in Florida's best interest to have their second line setter with Matthew Tkachuk riding herd to try to stir up as much trouble as possible.
Well, this is a good thing about these distance between these games. Guys like Tkachuk who are hurting are getting healthy. So,
yeah, well, do we want
Aaron, that? Whatever. Enjoy the game, Aaron.
Thanks, Frank. You take care.
I'm going to go lay down some more. I don't think I laid down enough. I'll talk to you later, buddy. Okay, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. This is CFL Talk. You can follow us on Candid Frank Stanishi on YouTube, 1030. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.